Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Red Donkey Projections. I'm Eric and we have Lucas as always.
Hey everyone.
Today is November 7th, 2021, and today we're going to talk about the governor election in New Jersey. Most of the results are in. There are still some votes that have to be tallied, but more than 95% are recorded, according to the New York Times. And Governor Phil Murphy, he was the incumbent, did win the election. But that is just the surface level claim. There's a lot to talk about. We have to talk about the margin, we have to talk about the state legislatures, we have to talk about what happened and why exactly it happened, and what it means for 2022.
And not only that, but we'll be reviewing our less than stellar prediction for this race. We'll come out with the Virginia video probably tomorrow. Well, our predictions for the 2021 elections have really been not good. I'm going to be honest here. The only one we got right were the Georgia runoffs, but regardless, we'll be taking a look at both of them and talking about where we think we went wrong. And with that being said, let's get right into it.
So right now, the margins are close, which is, to put it lightly. Phil Murphy is leading by about, like 2.5 points approximately. It's probably going to go up to 3 once all the votes are going to be tallied, but that's a negligible difference in terms of the final result. If you remember, we really expected Phil Murphy to carry this district. In like 12, right, we were saying 11, 12, 13 points, right? And we were like, all right, let's not go too overboard, let's put it at 11. Well, this is going to be 3. Why did this happen? Quite a few reasons, and these reasons will kind of reflect what other competitive races should be looking at, or candidates of competitive races should be looking out. Their eyes should be opening because they got to do some work. All right, let's start unpacking. I think the biggest flip, Lucas can scroll down, was Morris County. That's kind of the start of everything. In 2020, this county right here went to Biden in about 6 points. Now it is plus 12 for Jack Ciattarelli. So yeah, you can see here, Morris County went in about 6 points for Joe Biden. Pretty solid against Donald Trump, which we'll get into. Now here in the 2021 area, 2021 race, we have Ciattarelli up by 12.
I want to add one point here, which is that Morris County is, for those of you who don't know, Morris County is considered to be a longtime Republican stronghold. This is a traditionally suburban Republican county that used to always vote Republican, but then with Trump and with the acceleration of the suburban shift left in the county, it has since been moving a lot to the left. But obviously, as Eric will discuss more, there seems to be some change from this election.
Right. So we see kind of like this 18 point departure kind of from like the Democratic side. So as Lucas explained, it used to go Republican and then it went Democratic for 2020 and now it's back at Republican. So it kind of like took a swing back to like its original roots. So that's kind of like where the start of the problem was. And also the second problem in general was that turnout just wasn't as high as people thought. A lot of people just assumed, it's Phil Murphy. New Jersey went plus 16 in the last election. Why should I turn out? It's not like I'm voting for my representative. It's not like I'm voting for the presidential. This is like, just some small election. Well, if you get most of the New Jersey population that's eligible to vote to think like that, then just turnout is just not going to be that high for the Democrats. And that's just going to give more incentive for the Republicans, to turn out. Jack Ciattarelli, as we explained in our prediction, he was just shooting out advertisements, just advertisement after advertisement all over. If you're a New Jersey resident, you saw them everywhere. No matter what channel you flipped to, you saw at least one of them every cycle. So he was spending a lot. He really, that people say if there's a will, there's somewhat of a way. And he really got his way up until, towards the end when it finally went back to Phil Murphy. So turnout really did not turnout did not do a good favor to the Democrats, and that's why Jack Ciattarelli was able to get so close. They're both got 1.2 million, so like this margin is really not big at all. It's definitely less than 11 to 12 that we were expecting. Lucas, you want to add anything?
Yeah, are you saying generally in like the entire state?
Yeah, even like in safe counties like Essex, it's not as high as it used to be.
Yeah, absolutely. This time it was much lower. If I read this correctly, I believe turnout this election is going to be 30 to 40%. Uh, in 2020, it was 72%. So obviously it's a huge drop off from what the turnout's going to be. Obviously, we don't have the final numbers for turnout yet. We'll check that out later, but most people thought this was going to be very safe. I want to add to Eric's point about like voter apathy with like Democrats thinking, "Oh, Phil Murphy's going to win anyway." I know that like we probably shouldn't be using sign logic here, and I think sign logic is a terrible thing to use to predict elections. But I think it's a good way of gauging like voter energy because as Eric knows and as I know, we've the past few months have gone through like various parts of the state, traveling to different places. Jack's signs greatly outnumbered Phil Murphy signs. And this is not even just like in in where we are, but like throughout the state. We live in a D plus 30 town, and our town voted 20 points to Phil Murphy. And yet, uh I want to say how many Jack signs were there in our town? I would say like 15, 20, while there was like, I don't know, three Murphy signs. Does that sound correct, Eric?
Basically, yeah, and our town is extremely, safe D. So it was very strange.
Yeah, and again, I don't want to use sign logic here because that's a terrible thing, but this is really interesting to notice.
Yeah, and also one more big factor that I forgot to mention, and this applies equally to Virginia, which we'll talk about in tomorrow's video. Joe Biden's general approval rating around this time was sinking. It was like the bottom of the trench. Is his performance just really like the approval rating reflects a really bad performance for Joe Biden at the time of like the most critical point in the race. Infrastructure deal was not passing. Job numbers were starting to go up, but still in the weeks preceding, job numbers were not as high as people expected. Gas prices were high, and although people say, or like some people say that the president does not reflect the gas prices, it is like a talking point that to the general public it does like kind of strike out that like, oh, under this president the gas prices are this high. Well, just it was just a lot of culminating things from the Biden administration just were not going well for him, and his job performance was like, I don't know, he has like a 50% disapproval rating and like a 42% approval rating, so it is just the lowest that it's ever been. And that definitely reflected in more in the Virginia race than the New Jersey race, but still definitely New Jersey. They see how like the Democratic administration is just not producing any results or any viable results, and they feel more reluctant to vote for this party, like for more independent voters per se.
Yeah, and I think that's especially applicable in a place like Morris County, where I think many Democrats, or not Democrats, many independents or moderate Republicans who might have supported Biden because they were really repulsed by Trump, they swung back to Jack Ciattarelli this time. And I think Jack Ciattarelli did a decent job kind of presenting himself as like being more moderate than like Hirsch Singh might have been if he was the nominee. Of course, he did speak at a Stop the Steal rally, which of course hurt him. But I think he did decently trying to portray himself as a moderate. Like he talked about abortion a lot, or he emphasized a lot about lowering property taxes in his ads, at least. So that probably did help him decently in places like Morris County with more traditionally Republican suburban areas. But it still didn't put him over the finish line, but that doesn't really matter here. In Southern Jersey, I wanted to mention one more thing, which is that this is just showing the collapse uh, of support for Democrats in these blue collar, uh, more working type of Southern Jersey. and we've seen this trend throughout the past decade. And I'll mention a little bit more when we dive into the state legislature races. Steve Sweeney surprisingly lost here. So we've just been seeing this gradual trend of Republicans are doing better in Southern Jersey, but Democrats are improving in Northern Jersey suburbs. So New Jersey is still trending to the left, thanks to the Northern Jersey suburban areas going more and more to the left. Is that it? I think that's all. Eric, is there anything else you want to add?
No, not really. This doesn't really apply here. But I'll just have one last point that like we're probably going to see a pattern where, but this is definitely more reflective in Virginia, where McAuliffe's campaign was like 99% Youngkin is tied with Trump. But like, in 2020 when Trump was in office, it was a lot easier to like say, "Oh, look what Trump look how bad Trump is, doing right now and how bad like he's representing the country." It's We're going to see that it's going to be a lot harder to do that when Trump isn't in office. He may be coming up in the news here and then, but like if he's not in office and actually like making any executive differences, it's kind of hard to tie him and like involve him. That just like the public doesn't resonate that well. Like he's not really in office. Did that make that much of a difference here in New Jersey? Not really. But it could have, I'm sure Phil Murphy did some tying of Ciattarelli to Trump, saying that he attended a Stop the Steal rally. But it's probably going to stop working now that he's out of office. All right, time to move on to the state legislature.
Right, yeah, we'll move on to the state legislature now and kind of discuss what happened here. And this was also, quite frankly, a disaster for Democrats. Democrats were supposed to gain. We didn't make a prediction on the state legislature, probably should have, but I personally predicted that Democrats would gain seats in the Senate and in the Assembly because technically everything should have favored them, at least with the fundamentals, without taking into account, of course, the current environment. We'll start with the second district. The second district should have been competitive for Democrats, and Democrats should have won the seat. And even Elections Daily predicted that this would go lean D. Of course, that wasn't the case. Southern Jersey, again, I mentioned this earlier, Democrats are just not getting those blue collar votes. The biggest surprise of the night, of course, New Jersey State Legislature or State Senate District 3, which might honestly be the biggest upset in New Jersey history, or at least in modern New Jersey history, electoral history, which is Steve Sweeney losing to a truck driver that spent $153 on his campaign. It's been 83 of them on Dunkin' Donuts for his staff. So this was a huge upset. And I think a lot of people, when they initially saw it being Sweeney versus Durr, they were like, wow, Sweeney's definitely going to win. There's no way Durr can win. But Southern Jersey just, I guess they just came out and voted for Durr. They were just very upset with, I guess, how nationally Democrats were doing. As Eric said, they didn't really do that much. I think the only notable thing they got done was the American Rescue Plan. Infrastructure was stalling. Afghanistan took a hit to Biden's approval ratings. Everything just wasn't looking great for them, so they went with Durr. And Steve Sweeney losing, I think the funny part about this is a lot of Democrats are actually happy about Steve Sweeney losing because Steve Sweeney is considered a pretty conservative Democrat. He's fiscally conservative. He's even called himself fiscally conservative and like socially moderate. And he didn't support a lot of proposals that were proposed under Phil Murphy, who's considered to be one of the most progressive governors in the nation. For example, the millionaire's tax, which Steve Sweeney actually opposed. So the new state Senate president is now going to be Nicholas Scutari of the 28th district. So we'll see how that changes. So that was just very interesting to note. Another important race was District 8, Dawn Adiago, who actually changed parties. I think she was not happy with Republican leadership at the time. She will go down against Jean Stanfield, who I believe is a state assemblywoman at the time. So that's going to be a net loss for Democrats there. So this is two Republican pickups. The 11th was surprisingly close. Vin Gopal should have won very easily, but it ends up being much closer than anyone could have ever expected. I think this has to do with the Southern Jersey trend, which we'll continue just to discuss when we're discussing this impact on 2022. This one was a very interesting one to see. 16, this is the one silver lining of Democrats on Tuesday night. Andrew Zwicker defeated former Congressman, Michael Pappas. This is a very fast blue trading district. that this actually, quite frankly, wasn't really that big of a surprise because of how fast it was trending blue. This was going to be picked up at one point or the other. The 21st was probably one of the bigger surprises of the night, where Joe Ciattarelli was, I guess some people saw him as being able to win the district considering how blue this district was. Joe Biden won the 21st district by 18 points, but John Bramnick is very, very popular among Democrats. He's the state Senate, state assembly, a minority leader, very well known, got a lot of crossover support. He won by 7 points. That was very surprising. And I think the last one was, remember correctly, it should be a 39th. Holly, sorry, I'm going to butcher this. Shepisi, I believe she's considered to be like also, one of the very more moderate Republicans, also won in a very large margin in a district that should have been competitive because this one really isn't that Democratic. So overall story is that Republicans kind of overperformed their federal margins that Joe Biden won them by. So that kind of just goes to show that there could have been some suburban reversion here because they might have been repulsed by Trump, but were willing to vote for Republicans down ballot. I'm not going to go through all the assembly races, but this is a similar story we saw in the district, closely matching what happened on the federal level. I think on the state Senate level, the only difference was District 11, where currently Republicans are leading right now. Vin Gopal obviously was a very good candidate, so it looks like they might be losing 2 state assembly seats here. So overall, Democrats are going to lose about 4 to 6 state assembly seats right now, and they're right now set to lose 1 state Senate seat. So the big question is, what does this impact have on 2022? Of course, all this information is great and all, but what can we use this for? I guess I can start off by talking about how this could really be showing that Democrats will have huge problems in 2022, especially with those Northern Jersey and Southern Jersey districts. Andy Kim, which is right here at 3rd District, we've marked him as competitive. Tom Malinowski, we've marked as competitive. Josh Gottheimer and Mikey Sherrill, we've all marked as competitive. The big question going to 2022 is, will Republicans, or rather, would Democrats be energized enough to go out and vote in the polls like they did in 2018? If the answer is no, then Republicans might be winning many of these seats. Of course, redistricting is still going to happen, so this is before redistricting. But right now, if these were the districts going into 2022, I wouldn't be so confident in Democrats' chances really being able to hold on to all of these seats. Particularly, I think the 7th will be the most competitive in 2022 because, Tom Kean Jr. is a very strong candidate. He performed very well electorally, is very well known, and he's running again. So that could prove to be huge issues for Tom Malinowski in 2022. Plus, as we mentioned before, with the potential suburban reversion that we saw in this election, could prove to be pretty bad in 2022 as well. Eric, is there anything else you want to add to this?
Yeah, and I think we can take this out, like, not only to, like, the state congressional level, but, like, just to any other competitive race that's going to happen in the 2022 midterms. There are going to be a lot of them because by pattern, it is a red wave year. Also, Virginia is going to reinforce what I'm going to say right now. Democrats, they have to try. They have to campaign their rears off in order to stay afloat in the next upcoming race. Of course, they're not just going to sit around and do nothing. In fact, even in terms of redistricting, they're very aggressive when they know that they're under pressure. And we've seen how, like, for example, in January, I don't know if this was an outlier or not, but when Stacey Abrams and famous names went out and campaigned for Ossoff and Warnock, they won. The margin was very competitive, and Georgia was a very competitive state, but they did win at the end. If they really try hard and canvass and campaign to, mobilize the vote, it is still possible, to go against this conventional pattern that it's going to be a red wave year. It's just that, Phil Murphy, I guess he kind of got his name out, but he was still focused on, pinning down Jack Ciattarelli. Same thing with Terry McAuliffe. He just said Youngkin equals Trump, really did not emphasize his own, platform, didn't talk about his own experience. So, Democrats are going to have to change their campaigning strategy and kind of read the room accurately to really get any results.
I agree with you on that absolutely. The other thing I do want to add is Biden approval. So Biden has to get his approval rating up high enough in 2022. If he wants to change this pattern of red wave years happening, he has to get a big win in 2022. Obviously, we still have one more year. He can still do something to get his approval up. For example, in the past, there are certain times where candidates have been able to do well in an opposing midterm year, despite them being the party in power. For example, Bush with 9/11, and if I recall correctly, Clinton in one of his midterms. If they're able to get their approval ratings high up enough, they can rebound. So, of course, this is not the end of, the end all be all of it's going to be a red wave year. If Biden can do something big to get his approval rating back to where it should be, Democrats might end up being okay. I don't think they'll retain the House still, but probably the Senate they can still keep. House is wishy-washy, given redistricting plus various other factors. But regardless, these elections are very important, and they'll be, I think, a wake-up call for Democrats that they're not doing well right now and that they should be doing better. And also, we'll be coming out with a new video with Virginia tomorrow, so we can further do a deep dive into what exactly happened in the elections last Tuesday night and what their implications are for the future. And with that being said, that's the end of the video for today. Thank you all so much for watching. If you like this episode, please like one. If you like our content, please subscribe. And we'll see you in our next episode tomorrow.
See ya.